Hey everyone, welcome to Two Guys in a Shed. As always, I am your host, Jordan.
I'm Ethan. Hi, guys.
And now with improved audio.
Yep. After much deliberation, research, and science, we found out we should probably put the mics a little closer.
Yes. This is episode 3, where we're going to be talking about making custom items for D&D characters as a DM. But first, before we get into the episode, Ethan has a little shout out to make.
Shout out on Twitter. It's at WhippleWhopper. He made us some pretty bitchin' art, actually. You saw it.
Yeah, it's pretty sick.
It's got the crotch window that every shed needs. So shout out to him. Yeah, he's a pretty good artist. I mean, he is European, so take that as a grain of salt. But besides that, great guy. Great guy.
Yeah, friggin' Europeans.
Yeah, he's eating some chips on the lift.
While going to the loo.
The loo, yeah, and he stores his art supply in the boot.
Yeah, in the boot.
Yeah, that's the trunk.
I don't know what you're going on a boot.
No, that's Canadian, eh? So yes, I mean, you basically said it. Today we're going over just mostly from a DM's perspective about making custom items for your players. Anything from, a magic item to make the fighter swing a little bit better, all the way to super elaborate, enchanted, sentient, prosthetic limbs that take over the host. Yes. It's a whole array of it. So we're just kind of going into the reasons why you would do it, and kind of an explanation of the relationship between the DM making the item and what the player should be doing. Because it's not just on the DM. The player needs to give you something.
Yes, 100%.
Like, you can't just stare at your DM like, I love something cool, and then just stare in his eyes, hoping he can homebrew items off the back of his hands. Just
longingly hoping they fall in love with you.
That never works.
Yeah, I know. I've tried it.
So, you and I, we sat down, we went over why would you give a player an item?
Yeah. Before this episode, we kind of sat down and discussed what we were going to talk about, and we kind of came up with technically 3 ideas of why to give out magic items.
I have 7 on my list.
How do you always come up with more things than I always...
No, you said... Okay, no, we discussed this previously. You have the party needs, right? Yeah. That's 1.
Yeah.
You have the, giving an item to a character to make them better at their niche. That's 2.
Yeah.
You have story, campaign, and RP, which is technically 3 new ones. Those are all different.
Yeah, they're technically, but I lump them into 1.
Technically they're the same.
Yeah.
You got the good old shits and giggles.
Yeah, that's 4.
And you got playtesting. I said technically it's 7 because I have 7 items on the list. Okay,
so to start out, kind of the big one that a lot of, the reason for giving out magic item like this comes out is there is something missing in the party that is greatly needed. Whether that is, honestly, the most common one is nobody shows up with a cleric or any kind of good healing ability.
Yeah, it's for when the whole party's like, healing is boring, and they roll up with their rogues, barbarians, and fighters, and you're like, cool, you're fighting undead.
Yeah.
So your max health will be going down. But that's fine, yeah, just wall up your way to victory.
So, yeah, that's the main one. And Ethan has a few custom items that he's homebrewed. He's working on pulling those up right now. So another one that I kind of, has come up in our past campaigns was a character having to pivot their role in the party from a ranged fighter to a frontline fighter. And we didn't, for that situation, we actually didn't create an item for that, but looking back, we probably would have been the easier solution.
No, because the solution was we spent 6 months in town and I retrained.
Yeah, and that was, I think, for time reasons. Having an item would have been probably a little bit better.
I don't know. Realistically, changing classes, that's a huge switch.
Yeah.
I had to switch everything from proficiencies to, skill proficiencies, saving throws, my stats. I basically made a new character.
Yeah, whereas...
I don't really see one item. I think in that situation, the DM handled it perfectly fine. Was, 6 months of downtime in the city where I spent those 6 months training to be a fighter, no longer a ranger. The only weird spot was when you do something like that, you forget languages all of a sudden. I think she no longer speaks Orcish or some random extra one she got as a ranger.
Yeah, I just feel like I would have figured out a way to make a slightly better frontline ranger. instead of having you switch to a fighter.
Yeah, I guess technically, if he just gave me, yeah, I guess if you tether it from the other way, you could have like the weapons go off my deck. So like finesse.
Yeah.
He can make a finesse longsword and some kind of enchanted ring that lets me wear heavier armor. Even though she never actually wore heavy armor, she kept her.
She always kept leathers.
Yeah, no. She had medium armor on. She kept.
Medium
she had
armor.
the like dragon scale mail.
Yeah, actually.
And she rocked that for the entire time until she married a lovely lass and she retired and ran a bandit town. But yeah, so I recently I just pulled up that list of the magic items to fill in the lack of a healer, and they're so useful. Like I want some of them. I actually almost gave one to Daniel because he wants his character to like regen health. That cloak that does like the 2 or 3 health per tick.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, basically, when it comes, I'm not gonna sit here and read your whole page. If eventually we get famous enough and you guys actually care for the list, I'll be happy to send it over. I share it. It might be on Reddit. I don't remember. Regardless, it's just at first you have to think about what you're trying to fulfill. When it comes to sitting down and making magic items, no matter what it is, you have to you have to think about what you're doing and why. So it's super easy to make this list because my first thought was, okay, I need a cleric. How can I make items fit that role? So you look over what can a cleric do. You have, basically some buffs, healing, and I guess spare not the cantrip spare the dying, but the ability to spare the dying.
Yeah.
So I have a consumable, the Gem of Blessing. It's the bless spell, but it's a consumable gemstone that you use as the spellcasting focus, so the gem casts bless for you. And then, one of my favorite ones, actually, you and I got pretty detailed into this one when we talked about it in our other note prep when we tried to film this episode.
Yeah.
The Ring of Revivify. I put a mechanic on that actually was really a good way to bridge the difference between making an item to replace the cleric and then actually making a cleric in the party worthless.
Yeah.
So, Revivify is really probably the biggest thing you lose from not having a cleric. That's really their bread and butter. Of having one means that, hey, if you die, you have a safety net, is what they are.
Yeah. Yeah, your PC's not gonna be gone forever.
Yeah, it's not like if the fighter goes down fighting spiders, you're like, well, that's probably it, because everyone has a -3 to medicine, so they're not gonna make that DC check.
Yeah.
But the ring, it just has 3 gem sockets that you can put a diamond in, a diamond worth 300 gold.
Mm-hmm.
And you can use the gemstone, use the ring to cast it, but it only has a 70% chance to work. If you roll a 29 or lower after rolling a D100, if you roll below a 30, that number, it doesn't work at all. And it still consumes a diamond. So it's a risk. So it bridges the gap between, there's that chance it might not work, so they have to still be safe. They can't be like, oh, cool, the fighter has the ring of, Revivify, we're unstoppable now.
Yeah.
Now it's like, okay, if I die, we're okay. But
there's still a chance that it's not gonna...
Yeah, and I mentioned that in passing, and we paused and kind of went over how much of a very neat niche downside that is. Because, if you make something overheal or revive you, your players are going to act a lot more bravado with it.
Yeah.
I mean, think Pippi and Gorum. Those guys had brass balls of just unstoppable forces because they knew they weren't going to go down. They both had healing. They both were hard to hit. They would slide. They literally made a landslide, actually riding the slide down in Dungeon of the Mad Mage.
Yeah.
They would just go into castles and they own the place, and that bravado can really suck for a DM because that puts you in a ton of weird spots.
100%, because that's when I think that was when in Dungeon of the Mad Mage I almost killed one of you because that dude with that assassin with the poison arrows.
That was a big moment because that was probably I think that was the first time Daniel and I sat down and said, "Oh, we're not unstoppable."
Yeah.
Because I think it was me who almost dropped, and we were like, "Oh, if Pippi's going down, we should be careful."
Yeah.
There was that poisoned arrow he had. But digressing back to it, so if you find out what you need in this situation, you need healing. So you want to have items, accessories, and consumables that can fit that bit. I don't just like doing spell scrolls because technically technically,
Technically.
you have to know the spell. Like, you have to be able to access that spell list naturally.
Yeah.
So you have to have access to the cleric spell list to cast Cure Wounds, which kind of negates the value of a spell scroll, in my opinion.
Yeah, it
Because
makes it weird.
if I have access to Cure Wounds, like, I know I need Cure Wounds, so why would I have 5 scrolls and not just know the spell? The chance of, like, it's very rare that I see, because they're not cheap. I don't like the spell scrolls. Like, they're expensive, they're hard to make, they take a lot of time.
Yeah.
And why am I going to spend 2,000 gold for a stack of scroll of, just high-level Cure Wounds or, like, Greater Restoration or whatever the hell it is, when I could just learn Greater Restoration?
Yeah.
So, the Gem of Blessing, like rings and necklaces, I try to make the items subtle. I don't like just being, here's the plate mail of Cure Wounds, where it's just, here's some armor that can
Heal you.
Oh, I should actually shut up because there's literally an item that's called Armor of the Bolstering. It is just armor that... Never mind. I do actually have armor that just lets you... I'm reading it now. It literally just lets you cast Cure Wounds. Okay, so sometimes it is just armor that you can cast Cure Wounds.
Oh my god, Ethan.
It has 3 charges, so yeah, it's just cast Cure Wound 3 times. I have some cool ones, like the combat medic bracers. It's like those like leather cuffs. It lets you cast aid once a day.
Yeah.
So just like, I guess it really isn't combat medic, but it's kind of cool. But yeah, so I saw a mighty need, the need for speed and for healing. So I just sat down after a considerable amount of wine and decided to make a list to kind of branch that out.
Yeah.
And that way, if you're sitting down and your party gets wiped, or I should say not wiped because that's a different thing, like just their ass handed to them.
Yes.
Then you can go, oh, that's crazy. Well, you happen to find this really cool armor that lets you cast Cure Wounds. That's convenient.
That's real convenient. I wonder why. It's like when you're playing like Dark Souls or something and it's an auto save that gives you potions and you're like,
I do like most of these items. I mean, most of them are actually consumables, or at least, yeah, because like the Gem of Blessing, the Ring of Revivify requires diamonds. I enjoy the weapons filling that niche, that requirement, but in a limited fashion.
yeah.
Like one that I actually do like a lot that you and I spent over for a bit was the Prolonged Weapon of Mitigation. That's the one where basically it's a magical handle and 3 times, or I think it's 1d4.
Oh, yeah.
1d4 times at all. So it can have 1 charge or 4 charges. For every 12 hours, if you go down to 0, it will immediately heal you for 1d4. The charges do not reset. It is just... It basically will spare, I guess healing word is a 1d4? Is that healing word?
Yeah, it's 1d4 plus spell casting, so it'll just be 1d4.
Yeah, it's just a very basic healing word immediately, and it's like you don't even go down it. It actually prevents you from doing it. So,
another niche that we generally feel like is needed a lot is that sometimes people don't take, because it's kind of a boring spell, but is access to the spell Identify.
It's so important. Think of how many games have scrolls of identification.
Yeah.
Like, it's a useful one. We talked about an item like that.
Yeah, so
that was the Magnifying Glass.
Yeah, so breaking the fourth wall, kind of. So we recorded this episode once before and then realized the audio was messed up, so now we fixed the audio and we're re-recording it.
We did a really good trial run. Really good practice.
Yeah. And at the end of that episode, we had decided to homebrew an item that I think we made it to be like a jeweler's glass of Identify or something. Because I wanted to be, because you said magnifying glass, and I was like, magnifying glass feels boring. Let's make it like a jeweler's scope.
That's cool. And then we immediately ripped off that for 20 minutes talking about like the dust of Detect Magic.
Yeah.
That was a cool one.
Yeah, but I feel like, so that one, I think we determined that like you can use this like 3 times a day to cast the spell Identify on an item, and there's a like 30% chance, like on a a 100 roll that it will miss a curse, and then like a 5% chance that it will just straight up fail.
Yeah, because again, you don't want it to you don't want it to be the group wizard.
Yeah.
Because then who needs a wizard?
Yeah.
You want it to give them that chance, that safety net, but you don't want it to just completely take over. Because then it's going to be like, oh, well, then none of us should make a wizard.
Yeah. So God forbid a PC dies.
There's just going to be like, oh, we already have.
Yeah, we have all this stuff, so why am I going to make a wizard? I'm just going to be useless.
Yeah,
so.
I'm going to make a monk or a rogue, or I'm going to go back to fighting. And so, in terms of party needs, that's really the only two. The only other one is normally a lack of manpower. Like if you don't have a martial class, you can work around that pretty well.
Yeah, fairly easily.
But it's just that's really the only other need is if you have a group of wizards, you're probably going to have to, hopefully more than likely, probably a couple items of protection, just to give them a little bit of
bump that AC up.
Some healing potions, whatever it is. It's normal like player's handbook items can fix it, or just toss them like an NPC fighter mercenary.
Yeah.
But that's what the party needs. Is normally it's just those two. You lack healing, you lack damage mitigation, which is a fancy gaming word, really. A lack of being able to prevent that damage, a lack of that support.
Yeah.
And the second one you mentioned was the lack of, you said identify. I would really say a lack of a way to view the world through magic. Yeah. Because dispel magic, detect magic, the identify. But also, if someone can't cast those spells, that means you probably don't have proficiency in Arcana.
Nope.
You probably don't have a lot in religion, history, because normally the access to the wizard spell list, it normally means that you are an intelligent person. Mm-hmm. I highly doubt the champion fighter, the berserker barbarian, and the assassin rogue is going to be like, oh yes, I've heard of this religion. Of course, I've studied this for years in between my murdering.
Indeed.
And quite.
Indubitably.
And really, that's such most people don't think about it, but that's such an important thing to have is that wizard. Because they show you half of D&D. Half of the world of Dungeons & Dragons is this magic, this religion, this arcana. The entire world is built around that. Not having that means that your guys, they're not going to experience that part of the world. Mm. Which sucks for one, because as a DM, now you don't know all this cool lore. You don't know that the queen's actually a necromancer because you don't understand magic. You don't get those little hints. You lose out on lore. And secondly, it's a pain in the ass because now I have to find a way to give you information when I know you're probably not going to get it. Like, let's say I have a super magic item, you have to go get the item to shatter the crystal to save the god.
Yeah, you can go grab the item, but you don't know if it's there or if it's actually an item because, for example, there could be another guy trying to get that exact item. You don't know if you grabbed the item or he grabbed it first and made an exact replica of it somehow to trick you. And without the spell identify, who knows? And then, you can take it back to the town and get it identified by the town wizard.
That's expensive. That's lucky if you happen to be at a town with a wizard of that caliber.
Yeah, and then at that point, okay, you've already done the mission, and then you find out, oh, hey, by the way, he already took it. It just kind of feels crummy as a player. That aha, he outsmarted you, and you wasted all this time and all this money.
Yeah.
At least when you find out at the spot where you get the item, it doesn't feel as crummy.
And I mean, I think about how many times Detect Magic has given information or a room or a hint. It's such a useful thing. So if your players don't have that, I guarantee you're going to have to give it to them. Yeah. I think the favorite one we kind of riffed off of was actually the Dust of Detect Magic. It's a super cool. It's a small pouch of powder. You throw the powder over a 5-foot area, and as it settles onto the ground, it will actually attach to anything magic and glow. So if you have let's say you have 20 swords all in a beautiful line and you throw the dust over all of them. If any of those swords are magic, it's actually going to start like, imagine like glowing under a black light, that kind of like just sudden glow as the particles rest to it. It's super simple, it's super consumable. Any magic shop could sell it in like a little basket. Oh yeah, 1 gold per bag, 3 bags for 2 gold. Like it could be a little like impulse buy basically. And it suddenly solves that. Is now they have this dust, so now they have to, for one, think tactically. What in this room might be magic? Where should we sprinkle this dust?
Mm-hmm.
Should we gather everything? What if it's on a wall? How do we do the wall? It gives you the DM that moment of they now have a solution, and they're going to have to go about. Like, you can't just throw this giant thing of powder in a massive cave. You have to kind of walk around, really investigate, really put the time in. To hope that you find it.
Yeah, like you find something, you roll investigation, you roll decent on investigation, and you find something that looks odd, but you don't know if it's magic, so you can just take a little pinch of it, sprinkle it on there. If it glows, it's magic.
Yeah.
And then holy shit, I need to not touch that.
And it's a really cool way to spice up like a bandit's loot. Is maybe they have a little pouch of it. That's you now have a magic item. Congratulations, without really losing. Like as the DM,
you're not giving up a lot.
I'm literally giving you the spell detect magic as a party. Yeah,
it's one of those similar to Matt Mercer's Dust of Deliciousness, which it seems like it's a kind of broken item because it actually did like completely break part of his second campaign, but it's basically an item. You sprinkle it on any food item and it instantly makes that food item taste great, but it also has the added thing of it gives disadvantage on the next wisdom save you make.
But just poisoning everybody with it.
Yeah. So I think what it was like Jester sprinkled it on a cupcake that she gave to a hag, and then cast Modify Memory on the hag.
Yeah, that's clever. But yeah, so that's really it in terms of party needs. Honestly, is a lack of healing and a lack of
a spellcaster. And then somebody having to pivot to a new thing, but that's a very like niche thing that doesn't happen a ton.
And we'll get to that one once we get to that. That's a little more like I say playtesting is once you get to that level.
Yeah.
You see an issue. You really need to ask what do they do, like what don't they have? What do they not have the capacity to do?
Yeah.
Cast X amount of spells, do X, do Y, do Z, and all you have to do is tailor an item to do exactly that. They're going to love it. It's going to be a huge fancy thing because it'll make them all feel stronger. Even if it's the crowbar of crowbarring where you get an advantage on breaking down a locked door. If it's a party of wizards, they're like, fuck yeah, we can fuck these doors up now.
Yeah.
Indubitably, like, let's get it done.
Yes.
It gives them, they still feel like they've gained something, and all I've done is save myself time watching them struggle against the door. Actually, a bad example. They probably have knock, so I guess.
Yeah, but a crowbar is slightly less quiet than knock.
So that's party needs. Is the party needs something, and you must find an item to fit that area.
Yeah.
We'll go over more items, and again, you can always ask us. We share these things for free.
Yeah, just hit us up on social media.
We have lists we can go on. That's why he had to interrupt me when I was still on healing items.
Yeah.
Can go all day.
Yeah.
So a very similar one, but one that is different, is an item custom tailored to a player specifically.
Yes.
And what this is about 95% of the time is you have a player who likes to do one thing. Throw punches, throw a net, whatever it is.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, shout out to
both of my PCs.
Shout out to both of your PCs in my games. What it is Jordan likes to punch. His whole guy is just two fists walloping bad guys. But obviously, they're not magical. The damage is kind of low. You can't stack effects on them. So just giving you like enchanted gloves that make your punches magical, make them a +1/+1 fighting gloves. Immediately, I give you that item, and I've now custom tailored something to you. Maybe the ranger, like in the one we talked about earlier. Maybe the ranger's suddenly up front. Maybe the party went down. The party lost some frontline martial fighters, and now the dexterity-based ranger is having to draw her two short swords in an effort to fight off the orcs.
Yeah.
Giving her an item tailored to a ranger, it uses your dex, and it doesn't require proficiency, and it's finesse, whatever it is. You can now very easily custom tailor her a +1, and now that fighter, that ranger is now proper.
Yeah.
You know, and the more you DM, the more easy it'll be. If you're just starting DMing, it's gonna be really tough. So what you want to do is just hand her a +1 longsword and say, "Don't worry, this one's special. It uses your dex."
Yeah.
And that's all it is. Is now that fighter, fucking that ranger. It's because we're talking about one of my characters who's actually a fighter.
Yeah.
It's throwing me off. But it's just we've now tailored that for that person specifically.
Yeah. And just that little bit, like as a player, like being told, "Hey, you have a longsword. Don't worry, it works for you." That just makes you feel awesome.
Just cum noises, just immediate.
God damn it, Ethan!
that has to stay in. You
Try
can't
to
remove
be
that one.
appropriate.
Why?
I don't know.
Everyone who's listening are people who know us. Like, hi, Dad. Hi, guys. How you doing, Whipple? I miss you, buddy. Are we still playing No Man's Sky on Sunday? Let me know.
And I haven't even told any of my family I'm doing this.
Oh, everyone. I'm just like throwing YouTube links at their face, just like across the room, like, like and subscribe.
Yeah.
And that's so just custom tailoring the item for that bonus. Normally you're gonna want it to be pretty simple. It's actually really hard to tailor them.
Yeah.
It's much harder to custom tailor an item for a player than it is for a party.
Oh, one that I made, now that I just thought about it, was for Yena, my amulet of armor storage.
Iron Man.
Yeah. So this was an item.
She was fucking Iron Man.
Yeah, pretty much. So Yena was his cleric that when he built her, didn't realize that there was strength requirements for heavy armor.
Well, I did. I just didn't think we'd find it so quickly. We found it pretty early on.
Yeah, I think.
We were like, I mean, I was stunned we found it because she was like maybe 5. You know what? I don't even think that. I think she had just hit 4. Like she had the chance to use her ASI to try to get it up, but I was 1 point too low. And I was like, I don't want to waste my ASI on +2 to strength when it still won't work.
Yeah, and so Ethan here was constantly bugging me. He's like, "Just give me the gauntlets of ogre power."
No.
Just give me, I want to wear the heavy armor.
What I said, I jokingly said that, but I said you can make an item for me that increases my strength just to what it needs to be.
Yeah. And
not 19, like 15?
It's 15.
Yeah, so I think she had 12. So she needed 3. So just a +3 to strength.
Yeah, but I didn't want to give that bump to strength because I don't know, part of me just didn't think it felt right to give an item that bumped Yena's strength. So I thought about it for a while, and then I came up with the Amulet of Armor Storage, which was an item, it was an amulet, obviously, that you can touch it, and it will release armor around your body automatically, which is basically Iron Man.
Sorry, I'm laughing because I'm still thinking about cum noises. I'm still stuck on that. Now
I can't even edit it out.
I'm gonna tell you right now. I'm gonna say it 1 or 2 more times in the recording. So you have to like edit half the podcast away. I will learn to keep the things I say you can't censor me.
And the other ability that it gave that was kind of the more important one was armor stored in this amulet allowed you to ignore the strength requirement for the armor.
Yeah, and that's that was a very big deal. It changed very little. It just let me have a higher AC. I definitely abused it for intimidation factor because I could just I was a pretty blonde woman. I'd walk up like, "Oh, can I go into the club?" "No, you can't go away." "Oh, okay." As I just tapped the necklace and now I'm covered in full plate.
Yeah.
"You sure?" "I'd love to go inside." Inside.
Yeah, and that was like the best solution that I could think of as a DM because it didn't give up much in terms of giving her more strength. It didn't, and I think the main reason I didn't want to give you the strength bonus is because it would kind of change your character a little bit. Because I mean, while you probably wouldn't intentionally, it would add a little bit of like, okay, well now I'm stronger, so I'm gonna do a little more frontline stuff, and I didn't.
She was super frontline. No, that's right, because there were times where it was only like me and Cassie playing, and we'd be like hiding at the top of a stairwell because we're too scared to go downstairs because like the soldiers are down there.
Well, and that's why you had John.
Oh, John,
Yeah.
what a guy that John.
Yeah. So and that was my solution for that because again didn't give up much, helped out.
Yeah, and that's all you had to do is you saw that a player needed something specific, and you found an item that you felt comfortable with to custom tailor it.
Yeah.
That would then allow you to let me achieve that level of ability without changing the game too much. Without like I guess when I make an item, my first thought is if I give this to the player, do I have to start taking it into account when thinking about encounters?
Yeah.
So that's where I normally draw the line is if I give you this blank, if I give you this cool thing, does it mean that this is so powerful I'm going to have to remember you had this when I'm making a bandit fight?
Mm-hmm.
And if the answer is no, I'm totally cool with doing it.
Yeah.
The only time I'm cool with it breaking it is when we do the other side of character wellness items, is making them that legendary item, their sword.
Yeah, that character defining item.
Yeah, the druid staff, the robes of the archmage for a wizard, but custom tailored to that person specifically.
Yeah, which again I made one for.
Yeah, you made it. Yeah, tell
about
it.
So,
all of our viewers, our listeners.
So again, it's another item for Ethan. I tend to do that a lot. I made the item Doombringer for Ethan's character Pippi. Ethan's character was a bit of an interesting character build. I mean, I have seen it a little bit, more lately, but it was a paladin that doesn't know what the god or who the god is that's blessing him with powers.
He was a chaotic, neutral, alcoholic, atheist paladin.
Yeah, which is an interesting concept.
What a fucking guy. We could do a whole episode on Pippi. Like, he was very, he ran the party.
Yeah, but
it was good times.
Yeah, but near the end of the campaign, I kind of felt like it was pertinent for Pippi's god to reveal himself to Pippi, and the way I decided against that was to have Pippi and the party go through this trial in a cave. That was
I hate that goblin.
Yeah, where there was a goblin that was being obnoxious.
It's just the worst.
And
I still have nightmares.
And then at the end of it, there was this legendary sword called the Doombringer.
It brought doom.
And I can't remember the exact specs because I did not save it.
I have a little bit written down. I'll pull it up. While I do that, basically it was just an item that was custom tailored for me. It makes me better at what I do. And on top of that is it it got stronger as time went on. Which I think if you're making someone an item specifically is you want them to have that over time progression. You want it to get a little stronger over time so they can really invest their time in that weapon. They become attached. It's my sword.
Yeah.
It wasn't a cool sword I found. It wasn't some bandit sword that I looted. It's mine. It's here for me.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that at least me personally, I try to include in a lot of those kind of magic items is the feeling of ownership and an item that grows with the character, because it is a legendary sword, and it's kind of sucky if at a certain point you're using this legendary sword and then all of a sudden you find something better.
Yeah, like a +3 sword's better than your god-crafted sword from the Nether Hells.
Yeah. And so that's why you have to kind of make them level up with the character.
Yeah, and custom tailor it for them. So so on this sword, this was custom tailored for my Paladin of Vengeance. It was a +2, so you get +2 to your attack rolls and damage rolls.
Mm-hmm.
It let me cast Fairy Fire, I want to say once a day.
So the Fairy Fire was part of its second ability. So I know it started out as a +1 sword. It started as a +1 in its first state, and then it had, I can't remember what the exact things were?
So later on, so I wrote like little scratch notes. It says level 16, so I'm assuming around when I hit 16 or something like that. 3 times a day, it would let me cast Staggering Smite. And at level 20, it gave some spell slots. It gave, I have written down 3 first level spell slots, 2 second, 2 third, and 1 fourth.
Yeah, I think that's, okay, so you just wrote down the entire thing
and
that
then,
it gave.
I think it let me commune with the god once or twice.
No.
It says commune right here on the scratch notes.
Oh.
You know, if once Pippi dies, the sword returns to a normal sword.
Yep.
And then if anyone touches it, it hurts them. Like this was Pippi's sword. No one else could even touch it.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I was like, you know, and it kind of creates this precedent of, you know, it's this legendary sword that precedent.
That's what you said.
It set this precedent that it was an item that, you know, once Pippi's gone, there's just legends of it. There's no actual proof that it existed, you know, and if I do so choose, you know, this sword could reappear for another character in the future in my campaign, in my world setting, because, you know, they worship not the Doombringer anymore, because he doesn't exist in my world anymore, but I think Iroas kind of adopted that niche, and so the sword might appear one day as a, hey, you know, this is your sword now. It was passed down to you by your predecessor.
A new hand touches the beacon. Listen, hear me and obey.
Oh my God.
Something. Take my beacon to Mount Kilcreath. Be the source of my judging. You know. I guess that's like half of it. I knew like half of it. It's impressive. I'm proud of myself.
But yeah, that's the Doombringer. That was kind of I think that was actually my first ever big one.
Yeah, and a big one is important. You know, we all can't have little Tootsie Roll items just running around doing stabbing little things. It's good to have, you know, those really big end game artifacts where this is, you know, a level 16, level 17, 18, 19, 20 druid. He would have that. He would, you know, he's an arch druid. He would have that druid staff. Or, you know, anyone who gets to that high, they would end up forging their own path, just like in D&D lore. You know, all those wizards that make the spells, those warriors who are those champions, they would have, you know, your party would be just like them. They would have their item. So I love over time trying to give 1 or 2 people their item. You know, they have the quest for it, they have to earn it. So, you know, they get a spotlight. It helps to promote roleplay.
Yeah.
You know, and it can help draw them in.
Yeah. So that's one of the reasons I generally like to give one of those big items, because you're going to have to work for it. I'm going to create a storyline that goes with that item. Like the cave. Like, I think that's the only real big one I've made. But, you know, so, like, just create a story, you know, a subplot more or less that goes with finding this item. That, and I think what I want to start doing because I'm not a great DM yet. So one thing I want to start doing as a DM is kind of give that item and that story to the player that kind of needs a little bit more push to get into it, to more gauge, not only, you know, give them kind of a spotlight, which not a lot of players who are the quiet ones get, but also see where their heart's at with, do they want to roleplay or are they just there to fight? Which, if they're just there to fight, is cool with me, 100%. I don't care. But it allows me to kind of assess what they're doing, why they're here, and it's still, at the end of it, they get their cool item that makes them feel cool.
And on top of that, you mentioning, you know, that role play and pulling them in is actually another great reason to custom make items for their characters. Even just items for the party itself is that story, that campaign, that role play arc. In that earlier example you said, where, you know, the party has to go out and get the item to do the thing, that item could be a cool artifact. For those who played on D&D Beyond and have seen the inventory, or those who just read the modules, most campaigns have an artifact, that kind of item you're questing for. And that's a great way to pull in your players, is if they stumble upon, maybe they don't even stumble upon the campaign, the first thing they do is they find the item. They accidentally find the item on a destroyed caravan, and now the cult's after them, because now they have accidentally T-boned this story halfway through, and now it's a mystery. Why are we being chased? What's going on? Yeah, and that's a great way to just pull them into a whole new story. Like you said, it's a great way to try to help get players into the role-play mood, help them connect to the world. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work. Some people are destined to be quiet and just roll a hit. And that's fine. If that's how you like to play D&D, that's how I like to play D&D. But it's a great way to give them a connection to the world. And it's the same, you make the item the same way you would make, one for the party or one for the players specifically, is you need to find out why. What do I need this thing to do? Why do I need it to do it? So if you need the item to release the god from the gemstone, it's probably maybe it's a blunt weapon that can deal damage to on a new plane of existence, and you can just kind of play with it and custom make the item. But like everything else, you need to find out why. What does I need to do? Yeah, and that's a great way for story and campaign and roleplay.
Yeah.
I think it's really it's a good I should say a good idea. It's a cool idea to give one player a super powerful item that really pulls them into that, like we said, that kind of T-boning the story halfway through.
Mm-hmm.
If the warrior suddenly finds a very powerful sword, he's now forced to roleplay because people are talking to him about it. He's being hunted by a cult.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's a god's artifact, and the god used the sword to connect to this person, saying, "Please, I know you aren't my champion, but I need you to help me right now."
That's a big one.
My people are being hunted. You have the sword now. Please, you have to do something. And now they're going to feel obligated, or just they now have something to work off of. And I think that's a great way to kind of give them that spotlight. It's not massive. They're not running the party. They're not having to save the world.
Yeah, and I feel like that's what most people need to get into that want to roleplay, is something to bounce off of.
Yeah, Caden with Frederick. My characters and every other character Daniel makes. At all, ever. Because we always just completely start riffing. So yeah, I mean, roleplay, it's hard to roleplay, especially when it's just you're in an empty tavern. What do you do? And people can feel very overwhelmed. They really don't even understand that you can do anything you want kind of bit.
Yeah, it's one of those things where they kind of get like, what's the phrase? Choice paralysis.
I always imagine it similar to when someone asks you, "What's your favorite movie?" and you just suddenly forget every movie you've seen. Because when you're in a town and you go, "What do?" They just forget everything.
Yeah.
I mean, how often does James go to the library and just drink? He's found his initiative. He continues to do it. But now that he has, the power of that spear that he got in the campaign, that new item might, kind of help him pull from that. Maybe he wants to research the item or the god, or maybe he goes, shows it off to woo a lass. Who knows?
Yeah, and because I doubt he'll ever listen to the podcast, what I'm kind of doing with Kalemny is Kalemny's going to kind of return as this recurring character of trying to help James grow.
And that's the old guy we never asked his name?
Yeah. Cool. Well, he gave it to you just because he was like, you guys are being rude. So, just so you know, I'm Kalemny.
Why do you sound like a goblin now?
I don't know, because I lost the
voice. That was weird, yeah. I mean, to me, Ren didn't ask his name because that wasn't Ren's show. Like, that was not supposed... Like, Ren was... I was deliberately pulling Ren back.
Yeah.
Not to take what's clearly another player spotlight in this fight. But yeah, I don't know why no one thought about it. Maybe because Lady Gale wasn't there.
Yeah,
she's pretty polite. So was Ren, but I just never thought about it. So that's story campaign roleplay. It's very straightforward. It's pull up any artifact from any module, any adventure. You'll see that it does a specific thing, and here's why. And it's just the item is required for the adventure, and I love them finding it without finding the quest yet. I just love when they find a super cool glowing gemstone. They're like, well, this is weird.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they wake up to like a bunch of goblins in weird hats rummaging through their bag trying to find a gemstone.
Yeah, my favorite is when like that item appears and then without even like knowing, like it's not even like a glowing thing, but it's just like this mundane thing that
A
like
book.
like that gets pointed out to them. And like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. They ask a little bit of questions, but then they don't think anything about it further.
Yeah, and then there's, months later, cultists start hunting them down for the book they have.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, "Where's the book? What
Yeah.
book?
Yeah,
We don't have a
or
book."
it could be as simple as like you find like you talk to somebody and there's like like an old symbol or something that you've never seen before. You ask them about the symbol, they talk about it, and then later on in the campaign, that symbol appears again, and now you have a reason to go back to that person, talk to them, figure out what that symbol actually means, stuff like that, and it creates this like, as a DM, you drop that, and then it gives you a sense of pride if you drop that symbol again, and they're like, they start just
Oh my god,
flipping through
it's
their
the
notes.
thing with the stuff.
Yeah.
And the dumb bitch lady, she mentioned it yesterday.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's always a good feeling when like they scamper to get notes. That's why I'll be like, "Hey, what's the captain's name?"
mm-hmm.
But like, "Oh yeah," because I look every time they're like, "Oh hi, we're here to help with the bandits. The captain sent us." I'm sorry, who? Oh,
Captain Mouser.
the captain of the guard, blonde hair, blue eyes, looks bitched in plate mail. Like, yeah, what's her name? Captain. So that's really how you do the role play in the campaign and the story is you just tie it into, an artifact or just some kind of item that you good?
Hmm?
You like raising your eyebrows. The next one there is to make an item is, as the DM, just shits and giggles.
Yep.
It's a super rare one, and honestly, I would really tie it into playtesting. It's also kind of shits and gigglesy.
Yeah.
But basically, you have a cool idea for a goofy item, whether it be bread that turns you purple, or an item that lets you change how a spell works.
Yes. Which leads into the Goggles of Spelling.
Yeah, that was a great segue for you, buddy.
So the Goggles of Spelling is an item that I created, and until recently, I haven't been able to implement it into a game because either the spot that I put them, the players don't discover, or they get destroyed accidentally by a giant explosion. So recently in one of Ethan's games, I was just kind of like, "Hey Ethan, can I give them this present because I know they'll have fun with it?"
Sure.
Yeah.
Shits and giggles.
Yep. And what the Goggles of Spelling are 3 times per day, you can alter 2 letters of a spell without adding or subtracting a letter. Just alter. For example, the big one that I do is Fishbolt instead of Firebolt, where you create 1d10 fish.
It just fucking catapults them at their face.
Yes. And that's the kind of like, it might be broken, but it's also fun, and it's kind of limited, so it's not stupid broken. So, and it just adds this fun thing for a character to do, or for a player to do, because now I get kind of excited because then that player starts reading through their spells that they can get as in their class and be like, "What can I do to this to make this spell fun?" And
Fishball.
yeah, and so all of a sudden they're like actually reading their spells. It gets me excited when people actually read their spells because it seems like nobody except for like a select few of players actually read their spells. So I feel like trying to give them something to force them to read their spells.
Yeah, they'll sit there for the 18 minutes it takes to get through a massive round of combat, and then go, "Oh, my turn."
What does Fireball do?
Yeah, what's the How does suggestion work? It's like, you had 18 minutes, hotshot. You know what? It doesn't work. Cast Fireball. Let's get this moving.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty small one. That's really it. It's just a silly item you give the players. That's why I would test it in a lot to play testing. Play testing is one, it's a reason in and of itself is you want to test an item, but it's kind of a secondary thing. If you're testing an item, it can fall under all of its categories.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't used most of my healing items from that list, so the first time I hand it out, I'm probably going to give it to Sunday just for
Yeah.
kind of feeling them out if it's changed or not, if the healing's too much, too little.
Yeah, and if you know that's going to be a playtest, you have the right to change those.
Yeah. And that's actually a really important thing you just said that I feel like a lot of DMs don't know is it is okay to give your group an item that you may and be like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna cut that back to twice per day.
Yeah, because it feels too powerful.
If they throw a bitch fit, like, oh, the item breaks. Now it's 0 times a day.
Yeah, and that's something that, you know, while you probably shouldn't have to always explain it when you hand an item out, like, hey, this is first iteration, it might change.
Especially if it was custom tailored for them, it should come with the understanding of, I am making you a magical item, but we might have to go back and forth a little bit on it.
Yeah.
So, you know, and that's a really important part of in all of these categories. In any step, any iteration of making a magical item for somebody, for the party, for whatever reason, it starts with you talking to the players, talking to the party. It's more so for the play, like when it's more like a one-on-one with the player. As a party, you really wouldn't talk to them too much about it because it's normally a pretty simple item. But a custom legendary Staff of the Archdruid would be a very elaborate item. It probably has a lot going on. Maybe it adds to maybe like the one that I had talked to you about last time was like the Staff of the Archdruid, where it basically lets you increase the CR. It could be used as shillelagh. Like you could use it to shillelagh. It increased how many wild shapes you have per day.
I think it was it changed to like wisdom modifier,
something like that. Yeah, it was pretty simple, but in and of itself, it was pretty niche for a druid.
Yeah, and like you said, always saying, hey, I might change this, because sometimes, you know, it's very rare that you custom make a super powerful item and get it right the first try, because you might miss something. And like if the player finds something that breaks, like, you know, congratulate them, hey, you found something broken, but I'm gonna change it a little bit just because it's too broken.
Yes, it's a little bit too much. We'll have to retcon a little bit.
Yeah.
A really good tip with that is, let's say I want to make a dual wielding swords for a Battlemaster fighter. Lorna being a good example. Maybe I want her to get, if using these, she can use her bonus action to attack with both the weapons. So 2 attacks as a bonus action. Maybe might be like, oh, what if it can make 4 attacks at higher level? Well, now you're getting, you know, that's a cool idea, but it's better to start with that lower number. If you can't decide between 3 and 5 charges, give them 3 charges, and eventually they might, maybe they kill enough people to, or maybe they find an artificer or whatever it is that lets them improve it to that 5. Because if you're like, oh, 3, this is no problem, this is not changing anything, maybe you can go up to 5. That way they get that feeling of, wow, this, like, I'm growing stronger with my weapon.
Yeah.
And for 2, you're not getting hit with, I have to take power away from you.
Yeah.
Because no matter what, that's going to suck. It's better to give a little power over time than too much and pull it back.
Yeah.
So whenever you're making a magical item, especially for a single one-on-one person, it's important to start small. Don't throw the 10 charges of level 9 wish spell on that Sword of Wish.
God, that would be...
Make it be 1.
Fun.
Let's start at 1 a day. Let's just go ahead and dial it back.
Let's just not give them wish. Let's just cut it off at level 16. No wish.
Okay, yeah. Let's just cut it right around. Let's just say it does. You know what? Oh, we'll make it a +1 longsword, and we'll just we'll see if we can move up to wish.
Yeah. No, but as a DM, don't give them wish. Never give them wish. Never
give them wish. Or flying.
Higher levels, yes.
No, just walk. Hate flying. And that's really a really important bit that I don't think we think about is, you know, if you want it to have spells, you want it to have charges, maybe it regains charges. You have so many questions. How many charges should it have? Should it regain all of them on a long rest, or should it gain half? So you're always having, you know, it takes time to fill all the way up. If you're having it fill up half, then it's probably more powerful. So you're trying to kind of balance it all out. It's all a balancing act. You know, you're improving an item, and if you're new into D&D, you're probably going to be a little overwhelmed with it. There's so much going on. I mean, if you look at some of the magic items, they have paragraphs of how they function. So it's really good to start small. Don't just hand the warrior his super cool long sword of valor. Maybe it's a longsword of valor, but it's just a +1. And then maybe after a while it's a +1, but it lets him do like inspiring leader when he raises the sword in the air, and the magical energies, the aura of this sword blesses the people around him.
Yeah. Or, it does or maybe honestly, I would do Longsword of Valor starts out as +1 and lets you like use Inspiring Leader once a day.
Yeah, and you just start from there, and it's I haven't given you an item that's super breaking. It's not breaking the game.
Nope.
Very little thing is happening. It's changed nothing.
But it gives you a cool thing to do.
Yeah, and on top of that is now I have this +1 Longsword of Valor that does this thing. Now I know where you now have a foundation for continuing the editing of the item. Mm-hmm. If I just say make me a magical sword, you're gonna go, oh, but now you've made them a very simple sword. It lets you do Inspiring Leader, and it's +1. Neat. But now I can go, oh, you know what it could be is maybe this is blessed by a paladin, and maybe this thing can actually do 1 smite a day.
Yeah, it do 1 smite, or maybe like 1 casting of a searing smite, or 1 casting of.
Maybe it can now get a smite. Maybe are you writing that down?
Yes.
And it's just like that is, if you just kind of sit there, this is, literally you just watched us make an item. We're now making the Longsword of Valor 100%.
Yeah. This is how we work.
And this is how it works is you slowly start riffing. You don't just sit down and make an item immediately. Normally, I mean, we probably spend weeks hovering over an item and slowly morphing it into what it ends up being.
Yeah, but the basic idea, like literally that Longsword of Valor, I would be 100% comfortable throwing that into the campaign and seeing what happens.
Yeah, and then you can, and then it can become a character bonus. It's that personal item for that player. It could easily be story, campaign, or roleplay. If it's blessed by a god and you're it could be a whole thing. Mm-hmm. And your playtesting item, so really it can cover multiple of them just by tossing it in there.
Yeah,
and that's one thing I actually love doing is I have a plethora of magical items. Over time, I've used them to fill holes, giggity, or just to make holes too, because most of them are weapons.
Yes.
And you use them once, and that's really it. But you save them. So now I'm probably gonna toss the Longsword of Valor in on. Maybe I'll change it to like the Gloves of Valor. So you have enchanted gloves that let you do it. And then you can just kind of rip off it back and forth. And now I'm playtesting it, and then I'm gonna have a more improved item. And the more you make these items, the more your little DM toolkit is gonna grow. Mm-hmm. And eventually you're going to be able to roll a D100, look at your Google Docs, and pull out some super cool homebrew items like you're the Griffin Saddlebag. Shout out the Griffin Saddlebag. you can just pull a card out and be like, cool, you now have the bow of acidic wounding, and you throw it. There's another item we can just make. That's the next one.
Yeah.
And that's really it. That's making a magical item. So, if you from start to finish, the step 1 as a DM, step 1 is you need to make an item to do something. Mm-hmm. It can be anything from I want an item to be silly as a fun gift to kind of give them maybe after a very serious couple sessions, maybe somebody died. Mm-hmm. I want to give them purple loaves of bread. Yay!
Yeah, or the Wand of Smiles.
You can take that and go from there. So you need an item to do something. Second is, what does it need to do? Mm-hmm. For example, let's say that I need, I have a champion fighter. I just want him to be better I want him to be a better leader. I want him to have those abilities, that kind of very mild niche. Like really, Inspiring Leader is pretty niche. I mean, I think we've only, in all of our campaigns, only one person's had it, and that was Yena.
Yeah, but you give it to that fighter where all they have to do is, like, it's the Longsword of Valor, and they get, like, as a bonus action, I would say, once a day, they can do a battle cry. Yeah, a battle cry that gives the Inspiring Leader buff.
Yeah, to anyone within 30 feet.
Yeah.
And boom. Then that's it. Like, we just made, congratulations. You guys can write that down, the Longsword of Valor.
Yeah.
That's ours now. The Shed has produced its first magic item.
Second, technically, but the other one we didn't release in an episode because we made it on an unaired bad version of this episode. The Jeweler's Scope of Identify.
We mentioned it in this one, though.
Yeah, we mentioned it, but that was...
Oh, so I guess we're up to like 3 now because we have the Dust of Detect Magic as well.
Oh, yeah.
Third, the first weapon. Shut up. And a great thing is when you make these items, again, I love using the term a DM's toolkit, because the more you DM, the more this kind of mental space in your head is going to become more attuned to DMing. So when I first started playing, I didn't know how to. I would literally just look up. I want the rogue to have something. Top 10 items for rogues D&D 5e.
And then you look at that list and you're like, that's cool, that's kind of dumb, Why are these items mostly dumb? What does the rogue really want? Well, the rogue's not going to use that. What does the rogue want? So that's when your brain starts going.
And then you invent, your first little dagger, your dagger of spectral stabbings.
Yep.
And then it just begins. And these items are easily scalable.
Oh, yeah.
The Longsword of Valor, I can slap on a +3, give it 2 charges, and maybe let it...
maybe have it give it access to that one... the guiding smite spell that I...
Yeah, maybe it gets a smite. You now have probably a very rare item off of what would probably be like a maybe uncommon, probably rare.
I would probably put that rare to very rare.
Well, I mean, what you just said would at least be very rare.
Yeah.
It's not legendary. But the normal one, like the +1 with just Inspired Leader, that's probably a rare.
I'd call that uncommon, actually.
A +1 and I guess, because really it doesn't... Yeah, that's fair. But you slap on, you make the numbers a little bit bigger, and you now have a legendary sword, and maybe easily, and maybe you can add to it. Maybe you can make it the legendary version when it's so finely attuned to your player once you use it enough that you can actually wield it one-handed and still get the versatility 1d10. Because it's been so, you've used it for years, you're magically attuned to this weapon on a different level.
Yeah.
So now whenever you attack even one-handed, and now it deals 1d10, that's a legendary item that's custom tailored to that fighter.
Yeah.
Any fighter's going to shit bricks.
Yeah. If
you're like, hey, have you been rolling a 1d8 for 2 years? It's 1d10 forever now.
Yeah.
Sploosh immediately. Just cum noises immediately, just everywhere.
Yeah.
Just at the table.
1d10 one-handed, and you get to wield your shield still. So. Yeah.
And then if you want to get really spicy, you could get the Longsword of Valor and a stalwart Shield of Valor, and now they can work together. Yeah, you read that shit. And now you have a shield, so maybe what you can do is maybe the items can't be wielded by the same person. So now you have a fighter and a paladin or something, and they are connected magically so they can support each other in little ways. Oh, that's a really good idea, actually.
You cannot steal this. I've already figured out how to implement it into my game for a story.
Mine?
No, into mine.
No.
Nope.
Okay, who plays first, and then whose campaign's up next, motherfucker? Sunday.
Mine's already in it.
Mine too. I already know exactly where it's going to be placed to fight me. We're going to play test the shit out of those items now. Actually, that'd be really... Yeah, I like that, because you can't wheel them together. But if you have 2 players, now they can kind of... Maybe if the other one goes down, you can use a charge of the weapon to cast Cure Wounds on the other person.
I feel like I would make it to where they can be... if they do get wielded together... I would bump up the abilities, the Sword of Valor maybe becomes the legendary version that we came up with, and then the Shield of Valor is a legendary item that, when wielded together, basically creates this, god tier item combo.
Yeah, maybe it makes kind of like a haste, where it's a very powerful aspect of a buff of all your aspects.
Mm-hmm.
You know what it could be? It could just be you get haste. Actually, not a terrible idea. It's just a flat out haste.
Yeah.
That's how it works, guys. This is how it works.
Yeah.
This is how this is 100% how all of the items are made.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's how you do it. Is you find that need and you just start talking. You just start thinking about it.
Yeah.
You start thinking. This started with I wanted to give a fighter a cool sword, and now we have these 2 legendary sister artifacts that can be wielded separately and have different buffs, or it has a solo buff where if you wield them together, something else happens.
Yeah.
And just woo.
Yeah. That is how all our conversations wind up going, because whenever we're talking, we're just like, what if we did this? And then we just, boom.
Like tomorrow, which is Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas, everyone, even though this is January
This
8th.
this one comes out. So tomorrow's Christmas Eve, but this one's supposed to come out the day after Christmas because this is our
All right, and this is I fucked it all up. That's right. So, happy Boxing Day.
Yeah.
That's what it's called, Boxing Day.
Yes, happy Boxing Day.
Jordan, do you actually know why it's called Boxing Day?
Because people throw out a bunch of boxes and set them on fire.
So that's what I thought too, but actually, Whipple, shout out to Whipple again. That's right, buddy. You get 2 today, this time.
Yep.
So actually, we looked it up, and it is because way back when the nobility used to box up presents for their servants on Boxing Day.
That's actually really interesting.
So yeah, it's actually a whole thing. It's the nobility, the wealthy, they used to box up and hand out gifts to. I want to say it was servants. It might be like to the poor. I kind of forget. It's a little iffy, but that's basically it. It was a day after Christmas where the rich and the nobles kind of boxed up items and gifts to hand to other people.
Huh.
So happy Boxing Day, everyone. You see that? We squeezed in a Christmas fact for you.
Yeah. So another Christmas fact, because it's on my mind because I've been listening to the song about it for a while. Have you ever heard of the Christmas truce?
That was World War I.
Yeah.
Where they had a ceasefire and they played soccer and music and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. The Christmas truce is very interesting. There's a song by Sabaton put out that is about it. You should look up that song and you should really read about the Christmas truce because it's super interesting.
Yeah, it actually is a really cool read. It just shows you that in war, it's just people.
Yeah.
They're not the good guys and the bad guys. They're just people fighting. Well, Jordan, that's our episode again. Do you have anything else in your footnotes you wanna discuss? Any other tidbits besides the shield that I'm adding to my game? Can't wait.
I already have the sword in my game, so
fight me. It's already in mine. I already have a guy wielding it. You're gonna meet him.
Yeah.
That's it. We're done. We're good, you guys. That's all we had for today. That's it. That's the whole podcast. As always, I've been your host, Ethan, the whole time.
And I'm Jordan.
And it's a blast having you listen to us on Boxing Day. I feel like I'm a part of your family now. You're just listening to me talk about the super cool sword that I put in my campaign. Yep. Let it be known that my wonder focus might comes first. In case you guys weren't aware, we love talking about D&D and magic items. So if you ever want, I don't think anyone listening actually runs a lot of D&D. This is mostly our friends and family. But once we get super duper famous, feel free to reach out on us. Twitter is probably our number one. Instagram as well. Twitter is @LockedInTheShed. It's all one word, capital L, capital I, capital A, capital S in the shed.
Yep.
Instagram is the same thing, but it has the underline. What's this
underscores?
The underlines. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it's locked underscore.
In underscore A.
Yeah. And we are on YouTube or Spotify, obviously, because you're on one of those two things right now.
Yes.
But we have the opposite one. So if you're on Spotify, we have a YouTube. If you're on YouTube, we have a Spotify.
Yep. And if you want to reach out to me to talk, I do have a personal Twitter @JDSky10. You can reach out to me there if you just want to talk crap. It's fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I do it all the time.
Yep.
Good time. Well, guys, that's it. Thanks for listening. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Happy New Year's, and Happy Boxing Day, everyone. And we will see you next time. Hey,
Hey, there's that bug again.